Okay, Richard. So tell me, did you play soccer growing up, or what was your
Yeah,
deal?
I did. I played soccer until I was 16. I broke my collarbone skateboarding one day, and then I kind of stopped after that. But I did play soccer until I was like 16 years old. Real Madrid is the team in Spain that I follow
And have you been to games and stuff like growing up?
all the time. So my cousin had a season pass, and I would convince his dad why it was better for him to see it from home. So I would go with my cousin every 2 weeks. We would go to the stadium. I was one of those guys that would cry when we would win.
Really?
Yeah, I was very, very like a big fanatic. And until I got to the US and I realized that the time difference is so big, it's like 7 hours more in Spain. I didn't really have time to watch all the games live. And when you try to watch them recorded, somebody always spoils it for you.
How happy were you when they got Ronaldo?
It was probably the best day of my life, probably. And the worst day of my life was when they got rid of him. I never understood that.
He was there for like what, 5 years, 6 years?
9.
He was there for 9 years,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming you think he's better than Messi.
I don't. I used to
Oh,
say
really?
that when I was very fanatic, but I mean, I think Messi just has more talent.
Yeah.
Cristiano is just more work ethic, and he can match him. I think they're both as good, but Messi is just a better born player.
Yeah, Messi's his talent level is like, because he's so small, but he's got the ball on a string. He always finds a way to score. It's pretty incredible. What did you think about the Super League? Did you want that to happen, or did you follow that?
The Super League, the Champions League.
Basically, like, no, like all these teams in Europe and across the world, like all the big clubs wanted to form a Super League, remove Champions League, remove the Premier League, remove everything, and have
I
their own
think
Super League. And it totally, like, all these fans like went against it and like boycotted it and protested. It was pretty crazy.
I think they got to come up with something for Real Madrid not to win, because we always win,
Yeah.
almost all the time. Everything but not the last 3 or 4 years. There was like 3 or 4 years where Barcelona like really kicked our ass, but more than likely we used to win. So they have to come up with something. It's just
Yeah.
naturally happens.
Stop it. It's a monopoly. All righty, we're going to start. Thanks everybody for jumping on our national leaders call. We have an amazing guest today. Richard Anderson is going to be talking about recruiting and recruiting mindset. For anyone that's been hopping on these calls, you guys have been getting incredible topics to help you guys get from where you are to where you want to be. We are coming up on one of the biggest recruiting times of the year. So this is the perfect topic to go over for you from the perfect speaker. Richard, his story is great. He's going to talk about a little bit his background, what he did before the business and how he got into it. But I'll give you guys an update on where Richard stands as an owner. He's got 5 promotions, about to have his 6th promotion. He came back from COVID with literally nothing after his crew sort of fell apart and had to rebuild. He switched programs, which we'll talk about. But the biggest thing about Richard is he's the one who's taken advantage of Zoom more than anybody in terms of him networking, learning from Larry, learning from Ken, learning from a ton of people in our business. And he's been on the biggest run of any owner since we came back in terms of headcount, promotions, saving money, just really running a strong business. And so what a perfect topic from this guy. And if you're a leader on this call, there's no better person to listen to when it comes to recruiting, because that's what you guys have to do, is make sure that you're always recruiting. And he's going to talk about not just the recruiting process, but more about the mindset of what goes into it. So Richard, thanks so much for hopping on the call today. Your story is really cool. I keep saying everybody's story is cool, but your story is again, very interesting. You're not from this country. We were just talking about Real Madrid and how you're a huge soccer fan, or football. So you moved here from Spain. You actually moved here after graduating college. So you had dual citizenship, but could you talk about like your situation before you got to this country and what made you want to come to the United States?
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate the time. I actually graduated I did 1 year of college in business administration, but I never looked what that was, so I really didn't like it my first year. Then I moved to advertising and PR in Spain because my family and everybody always said you needed a degree to be good at whatever. So I did that, and it was around my second year in college. I feel like I was pretty lucky. My parents like found a good college for me in Spain. It works a little different than here. And I was very lucky because I met a lot of great people. I used to not like my teachers in high school, but then I did like my teachers in college. So I think that was awesome. And I had a very open mind. I think it was my second or third year in college that before that, I never wanted to just move. I wanted to be in my same neighborhood with my same friends. And then listening to other people and watching people travel and stuff, I realized it would be pretty dumb to have a US citizenship and not use it when there's people that come all over the place, you know, leaving everything behind to have an opportunity to be in this country. So I didn't want to be dumb.
Yeah.
And I packed up after I went through college, and I got to the US at the end of 2016 straight from Madrid, Spain.
Wow. And you said that when you got here, you were like, hey, I have 90 days. You had a place to crash with your uncle. And it was sort of like a 90-day time frame of I got to figure it out. And if I can't figure it out in 90 days, then I'll go back. And so you really made things happen quickly. You talked about how you got your driver's license. And then you ended up meeting Chang, which a lot of us have heard her story. And she's an owner in San Antonio. So can you talk about really what got you into the business, and what was it about meeting her or this business in particular that got you excited about it?
Well, the urgency of it all was great. My dad's friend that let me stay gave me 90 days because he had just got married. So he's like, I'll help you, but then you got to get out. So there's like 1% unemployment in Texas. So you got to find a job. So I started applying for jobs. I got my driver license, which was pretty easy, a lot easier than in Spain. And I started driving to interview the next day. And Chang was one of the first ones. I remember her first interview, like I was just, very nervous meeting the CEO of the company. And she really connected with me to a personal level and booked me for a second round interview. I kind of compared her interview process with other interviews I was doing. It all sounded pretty similar, but I just liked her, I read this one review on her company that said that she didn't like other people having second jobs. So I needed a second job I didn't tell you this yesterday. I needed a second job. So I started flipping burgers from like 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. at a fast food place.
Wow.
And I never said it because I didn't want her to get mad, but I definitely wanted to stay in the company because Chang and the vibe and people were just like super interested in me, or it definitely seemed like it. So that kind of got me to push through the first, few couple of months of challenges.
Yeah. Well, you said you were 6 months into the business, and maybe maybe because you were flipping burgers, you weren't as focused on the one task at hand, which was getting promoted. But you said it took you a little while to really take it serious and go all in. But one of the biggest differences for you that made you get serious was you saw your leader get promoted to assistant management, and it kind of like a light bulb went off. So can you talk about after you saw that, how things changed for you? And you were telling me how you just didn't have a step 7, and all of a sudden things started to sort of line up for yourself.
I guess I had a step 7, but I really didn't pay attention to it because when you ask anybody if they want to help their family, everybody's going to say yes, right? But yes, I was not committed. And the biggest reason is because I always looked at this job like something I can do in the meantime. I was trying to go work for Amazon or Google or Facebook because that's what my parents would be proud of. And I had a job offer for Amazon. They offered me like a salary, living in a different city. I loved it all. I had to wait for the position to open. So that gave me more time to stay. I decided to stay in this business until that position would open. And I was doing decent, not crazy good, not crazy bad, just decent. And then, yes, the guy that was in the field with me, the guy that pretty much taught me how to conduct an interview, would do my breakdowns each day, got promoted. I moved, he stayed in the same office, but, I went under his payroll. And he started sharing all these things with me. And I just asked him like, well, how much money do you make now? And I remember his first profit report was $16,000 for the first week he was in business. I think it was a biweekly period. So either way, still a big amount of money. And I remember he was making, about $1,500 biweekly before that position. And then he made $8,000 in 1 week, $16,000 in 2 weeks. And, I ran the math on that, and it just, I was like, wow, I don't think I'm any worse than you. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think I just started later. I think I can just be at least just as good. And that kind of got me thinking, Amazon will be there. Let me stay here and try, because I don't want to miss out.
Yeah. Well, ever since then, you haven't looked back. And I know you got promoted, I guess about a year and a half into the business because you took your time in the beginning. And then last year was 2019, the time is all messed up because of COVID, but 2019 was your rookie year. And you started saving really good money and you were really building up momentum. And then you had a couple promotions on deck and then boom, COVID happened, right? And that was a big deal for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, it sort of was the reason why this business wouldn't work, or things were just going to get too difficult for them, so they had to do other stuff. But you took this as an opportunity to say, no, I'm going to get better at the business and I'm going to push even harder. And you completely did a 180, switched programs, and went from doing retail to doing residential. And you really put yourself out there because you did a program that you'd never done before from scratch with only one guy on your team. But the biggest thing you did, Richard, that I saw was that you networked on how to be a better recruiter. And you told me when you were first running your deal, you really weren't a recruiter and you didn't have the recruiter mindset. You were just kind of doing sales. So what happened when you shifted after COVID to doing door to door with Nestle? What really clicked for you that made you think, wow, this business is really about recruiting, not just sales?
For sure. I think really what clicked is, going through COVID and seeing, the majority of the people around me complaining about their situation. I realized that was the easy thing to do. And I remember seeing an office in Dallas doing door to door when I was just scratching to work. Like I was not itching. That's how you say it. I was very excited to work and I couldn't. And I saw this office that had 20 people and I saw this other office that had 20 people. I'm like, how is this possible? So when the opportunity came for me to go in the field and go door to door, I remember I had one guy, but we recruited friends and we all went door to door for a few weeks. It was very fun. And I always wanted to grow. And I remember talking to people, and everybody sees the problems very easily, right? When you can walk into any office or into any business during COVID, especially, and it's very easy to see the problems. And I learned through COVID that the people that are going to make the most money are the people that find solutions, right? The doctor finds solutions. Whoever has the best vaccine for COVID is going to make a lot of money. And I realized that it was going to be a challenge to recruit in a time where people might not want to work face to face. So I knew but at the same time, unemployment was so high. And I just needed to find the people like me that wanted, to not complain and wanted to make something good out of it. So I just convinced myself that if I just try more than everyone and I reach out enough, I'll eventually get good at it by default, because I was definitely not good at it. My confidence was not good at it, was not good. So that's really the mindset change. And then I just had one guy in my team. So I talked to him about it. He was crazy on board about it. And, from there, it took like 3 months to actually get an office, but it worked, it definitely worked. And just the mindset change plus the work equaled results in the long term, for sure.
Well, you become, just unbelievable at recruiting, and it's become your thing where in terms of the tracker, you're always sending out the most prelims, you're always sending out the most ABOs, and new starts are just happening all the time. And I think it's a really good topic for you to cover with the reps and the leaders, because I think when leaders get into the mindset of just doing sales in the field and recruiting is not something they look at as what they do, they can get into the same situation a lot of owners get into, where they're not growing and they become stagnant. And you've changed your whole situation from being an owner that did good in sales, but you really weren't growing as quickly, not even close to as quickly as you're growing now. And now you're like, I want to become a regional and a national. And you've got all these big goals, and your people are seeing that as well. So, Richard, let's get into your topic. You have a lot of great information to share. If you guys are on the call, please put questions into the chat. We're going to try to answer as many of them as we can as we go. And then if there's any questions at the end we can answer, we'll do that as well. So Richard, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Van. So like he was saying, I think it doesn't take much talent to be good at this business. It just takes time, like anything, right? So I think the first thing I want to talk to you guys when you think about recruiting, especially in the leadership role, is the practice, like how much time you put into it, right? So I want you guys to do the mental exercise and think about, especially all of you guys in this call, you have some sort of aspiration, right, to grow. If not, you would take an easier job. Think about how much time we spend in the field. So I want you guys to do the math. So we spend 6 hours a day in the field times 6 days a week. It's 36 hours in the field. So we spend 36 hours getting good at the craft of making money. And the reason why is because you need to make money so you can pay your bills. So there is a short-term reason and necessity for it. And that's why we all do it. Now count how much time you spend practicing, right? So the average office probably does 30 minutes a day at least of practice pitching. Plus all the leaders, I'm sure a lot of you guys on this call, I know in my office and in every office that I go, there's always a group of leaders that come in earlier. So you even have, let's say, an extra 4 or 5 hours a day, not with the customer, but you spend practice pitching. So you basically have a 40-hour job, 40-hour week job where you're just learning and practicing how to make more money on next week's paycheck or on this week's paycheck, right? So it's sales. But when you look at the business, the only way you really actually make great money is if you can teach enough people to be as good as you are, or at least a bunch of people to be half as good as you are. So recruiting is the answer, right? And when I looked at my office, the month I started getting better at recruiting is because I started recruiting for 6 hours a day. And I started only practicing recruiting for 6 hours a day. And if an interview didn't show up or whatever happened, I would still get on the phone with the admin, or I would mock an interview to somebody, or I would listen to somebody else's interview, Dana Iverson at the time, or Chang, or Ken Weinrub, or I would send a previous interview to Larry and then he would talk to me about how bad it was and I would try to adjust it. But I just decided, like, if I can put 30 hours a week on practicing this skill set, I'll eventually get as good as I got it in sales. And I think because it's not in our schedule in the office, the leaders are not spending as much time as they do practicing sales, practicing recruiting. It's maybe not realistic to do it for 40 hours a week. But I do want to challenge all of you guys to, like, why not 30 minutes a day, 45 minutes a day, that if you don't have an interview scheduled, you actually are practicing that skill set. And you're practicing how to answer the paying questions and the pay and the schedule. And you're practicing how to just get better. Just like the first week you came in here, you got a training packet, you studied the pitch on Verizon, Inspire, Nestle, AT&T, or whatever the case was. And then you got good at it, you got promoted. And it's the same amount of effort without forgetting sales that we have to do to get good at recruiting. It's not, other than that, it's just volume. So I want you guys to do the math. If I can give you guys any homework, is just do the math. How much time are you actively spending getting better at recruiting, aside from the interviews you do? Because doing an interview is like game time. What really counts is the warm up, right? You wouldn't expect a team to get to the Super Bowl if they don't warm up, if they don't do enough training, right? You would only expect to get there if they do enough preparation. And then I want you guys to understand that the only thing that's going to get you faster through your learning curve is you got to do the math. Just like it's pretty impossible, I think, on any campaign. If you did 500 doors, 7 laps, it's impossible to not get 4 yeses on any campaign, right? It would just be impossible. And that might be exaggerating, but it's better to do the math backwards and calculate for worst case scenario, at the same time investing a lot of time into your recruiting. So first of all, you want to know how many leaders you want to build, and you want to have a deadline, because if not, it's like trying to lose weight but not being sure how much weight and by when. So you need to know how many leaders have to be built by when, and then you need to walk backwards that timeline, right? So let's say I always do the math on 50%, and I consider myself bad, because I know if I can guarantee myself the results of the leaders being bad, if I get good at practicing, then it'll just make it faster. Tell me if I'm going too fast. So let's say I just got promoted to leadership, and I say, okay, I want to get promoted in 4 months. So I have 16 weeks. So that's X amount of days of recruiting. How many leaders do I need to build? I need to build, again, let's do the math on horrible percentage retention. So imagine I need to build 12 leaders, because 6 of them are just going to be bad. So I need 12 leaders. How many new people do I need to onboard? let's say that's at least 48. Let's say 1 out of 4 people you hire becomes a leader. So you need 48 to start. Now you know you need 48 people to start in 16 weeks. And just like the field, the first 20 of them might not work out, and the next 5 I'll get to leadership. It doesn't matter. You just need the math. If you need 48 new hires, how many interviews you need? Call it double. So imagine you're a really bad recruiter, like I was when I first started, and you need 96 interviews. So now you do the math, and if you need 96 interviews in the next 16 weeks, you need 6 interviews a week. Let's say the recruiting in your office only allows for whatever, because each manager does their recruiting differently. And we'll talk about personal recruiting later, but that's your job. It's not your manager's job. Your job is to get 6 interviews a week. And if your office only provides 3, you need to go find the other 3. You need to, but the problem is not having this math. The leaders don't do this math. You need this math, because if not, you're trying to do a diet, but there's no goal on how many calories you want to lose. There's no goal on when the competition is for your contest. There's no Super Bowl date. So then we're more comfortable not doing an interview one day, or we're more comfortable being sick and not practicing. And these are the people that get more flat tires, more grandmas that are sick, more reasons why we can't show up. And I know, because I did that for the first entire 6 months I was working here. So you need the math. It's imperative. And you need to calculate it thinking you're bad, and then practicing to be good. And if you do 6 interviews a week for the next 16 weeks, that's 96 interviews. It's going to be really hard that 48 don't start, and really hard that 12 of those don't get to leadership by default. And you just basically guaranteed yourself 6 leaders that are good. And remember, you're using all of this time also to get better at what you're doing. So once you have this math done, you need to share this with somebody that's not going to take your crap and hold you accountable. And also you need to hold yourself accountable. 96 interviews, 16 weeks, 6 interviews a week. If there's a week where you only have 3, you better go in the mall and find an interview. You better go ask your friend to work with you. You figure it out. It doesn't matter. You consider this a goal that is not negotiable. Just like in the field, you cannot allow yourself to make less than X amount of dollars, because then you can't pay your rent. And the landlord doesn't care how many laps you did yesterday or that you were tired. Your landlord needs the money for the rent. So you need to come up with the money. This is the same way. You need to come up with the recruiting goal so that you can actually get to management, and not talk about this a year from now saying I did door to door and I learned something. No. You want to just get to management and then talk about it then. So that's what I want to talk about in this slide. I want to recap it. I just want to challenge everybody on, could you spend more time practicing the skill set of the interview, which is more important than sales? And second, did you ever do the math on yourself? If you haven't, it takes you 20 minutes. Do the math, break it down to the day, from deadline all the way to tomorrow and today. What can you do? That's what I want you guys to do on this slide.
That's great.
Any questions?
Well, I'm just very excited, because I know when we first got back from COVID and on Zoom, Larry was always talking about 16-week plan, and how every leader should have a 4-month plan. And even if you're taking 3 interviews a week, right, that breaks down to 48 interviews total, because you were doing the 96, so you were kind of doubling it. But even if you take 3 interviews a week, and that's without personal recruiting, you can still end up at a 50% ratio at 6 leaders in your team. And 6 leaders in 4 months, that should be you getting promoted to management. And obviously, we don't want anyone in this call to look at 6 leaders and think that's all I want. But I love that, Richard, you just said, hey, I'm going for 12 leaders in 4 months. I'm doubling what is needed. And then I'm doubling the amount of interviews I want to take. So I need 6 a week. So that includes Saturdays. So if you're a leader and you're like, hey, I'm taking 5 interviews a week, I want one on Saturday. Like, put the pressure on your owner and put the pressure on them to say, hey, provide more recruiting. And if there's not, if you're getting 3 or 4 a week and you're a top leader, look at all the other ways you can recruit. I think it's just such really, great advice, and hopefully you guys are taking notes on this. And then guys, if you have any questions in the chat, please go ahead and fire them off. But Richard, let's get to the next slide.
And then once you get to the interview, right? So now you guys know, like, let's say you applied this. So now you have a plan and you know how many interviews you need. Now you got to get good at them. But it's like driving, right? The first time you ever drove your car into the highway, probably most of you were nervous. But then today you drove to the office, probably doing Snapchat, doing your makeup, putting music, and you took the exit. You didn't even realize you got here, and you're safe, right? It's just the difference that happened is there's a million miles in between, right? So now the interview is just the same. I do the plan like Van was saying. I'm looking for 12 leaders because I know I'm not gonna do well at all 12s. I need guaranteed results. I don't need maybes. I need guaranteed getting to management, guaranteed, even if I'm the most unconfident and shy introvert leader. I need guaranteed results. So now when you go into the interview, the biggest thing I see, including myself, is it doesn't matter the job we have, is you got to remember you are not the seller at this point. You cannot let people fool you and make you think that you need them, because it's not true. Whether you're going through your worst week, even if you're a manager on this call, whether you have less money in the bank than you want, whatever it is, you at the end of the day either have a job or you own one. And your future is at this point just on you. And if you have a good moral and ethics, you will be okay. So you can't let people fool you and make you think that you need them or tell you that they have other interviews to do. And you don't want to let that trick your confidence level, because it's not true. I want you guys to think about sports. And when you get recruited by a college, let's say to play football, there's two types of recruiters, right? One of them tells you, hey, you're going to love this place. The dorms are great. There's tons of parties. The facilities are incredible. You got to take a look at the gym. The team is super good. Everybody supports football. You will love it when you come here and play. The other recruiter tells you, hey, listen, I don't even know if I have 5 minutes to put you in front of the coach. Why should we even think about putting you in front of the coach? And you see how one of them kind of gets you to ask more questions about, what else can I get? The other one kind of gets you to say stuff about why you should qualify, and then think about the facilities, or then think about the perks, right? So you want to put yourself obviously on the second recruiter and create a relationship, but at the same time, remember, you're the one that has an income, a stability for clients that are not going away anytime soon. Plus everything else that's happening, like all these offices that are opening, it's crazy. So that's the first thing. That's the approach and the attitude and the posture and the body language you want to have in the interview. So you got to remember that, because the interview is going to try to convince you why you need them. But you got to remember that you don't. It's all a numbers game. And if you had 100 people, are always better than one. It doesn't matter how good that one person was. And then when you're speaking to this interview, and all of you guys have different types. I know some of you guys are taking the interview into the field for 5 or 6 hours. Some others are doing it in the office. Maybe you're doing Zoom second round interviews. None of that matters. That if it works, it works. Is you have to still put yourself in this recruiter side, but you do have to create a good relationship, and you need to seem interested. As interested as they are in the position, you need to be interested in them, because this might be the person that is $40,000 in your account next year if you get promoted. And every time I look at my office now, I think about Chang that promoted me, and she makes money on every single sale that happens in Dallas. And I get jealous because she's making so much money on overrides just because she dealt with me. The price she had to pay was to like me and deal with my insecurities when I started. So the relationship you build is very important with the applicant. But again, don't let them fool you. The reality is they don't have a job. The more you go into the internet, you'll see how people are unemployed for 7, 10, 12 months. And all they need is somebody that tells them the reality and likes them more. At the end of the day, The reality is you have the job and they don't. And when you ask certain questions or you use like, you're going to get paid, your schedule will be, and you use the word you all the time and things like this in your interview, tricks you into have the applicant think that they already have the job, when now you become the recruiter that's like, hey, our facilities are great, our environment is great, our office is cool, the culture is great. And yet you do want to have a good relationship. But remember, the reality is, if you think about it the way I did, if you're not making a 6-figure income as a manager, or if you're not a manager yet making 100 grand or whatever the number is, you will. So you have to speak it into existence. And the person starting has not even proven anything yet. And then the last thing that I want you guys to remember is our business is not glamorous. It's just not. You can have an office that looks cool. You can have all the dress code and people looking great in your office, but this is not a cool doing business. It's not easy. Like, we're going door to door, and it's hard, and it's harder when you think about it than when you actually are out there, for sure. But you have to look at the negatives and pair them with positives. So many people doing the interview, they don't apply what they learned in the field because they don't practice enough, going back to practicing. And you don't talk about the positives, pairing it with the negatives. So I'll give you an example. I want you guys to think of your own. So think about pain points during your interview, same way you think about pain points in your pitch. And you got to tell the customer that there's a cancellation fee, or you got to tell the customer all these things that they might not be excited. You also want to remind them what to be excited about at the same time, right? So if somebody asks me, hey, so is the pay, majority of the pay, is it on commission? And I just say yes, I'm only just talking about the negative. Because people that haven't done commission more than likely won't like it. Or do I work 6 days a week? Yes. But you never would say that in the field typically to a customer, right? You would pair that negative with a positive, and not to manipulate anything, but to actually explain the reason why. So hear how different it sounds. Every negative, just identify the negatives. Typically, these are questions that your applicant is asking you is because you didn't preempt and strike the negative earlier. Hey, Van, so what's the pay? Well, it's on commission. But the thing is, it's very temporary. When the person gets to a position in management, they're typically going to double or triple their pay. So are you willing to do that? Is that something that you're interested in? And I end on control, right? Yeah. Or, hey, Van, so I don't know if I can work Saturday, or Richard, I don't know if I can work Saturdays. Do I have to work every Saturday? Well, listen, the reality is that we work every Saturday because we have to condense all of this training into our growth projection. It's going really quick, into 4 to 6 months. So we work every Saturday until the person creates the flexibility to actually mold the schedule a little more on their own, because they're the person in control. Now, is being in control something that's interesting for you? And I'm always giving the ball's always on their court. But so many times, the benefits. Is there benefits, Richard? No. Like, how bad does that sound? Like, it sounds bad. So you have to grab the negative and pair it with a positive. Hey, there's no benefits when you start. Just like many companies in the world, there's like a 90, 180 day waiting period for benefits, right? In our company, it works very similar. Once the person moves into a management role, they can kind of choose if they want to work, like what kind of benefits they want. So would that be a deal breaker for you? Would you be willing to go through our training to get the benefits if you're selected? Yes. Okay. Yeah. I need benefits in my job. Perfect. Well, then this is the right place for you. Right. And it's just shifting every negative and pairing it up with a positive, remembering that you have the job and that you want to be the ultimate decision maker in this process. And all of this, you really only get good at it by either the normal average people get good at this by learning from their own mistakes and their own interviews. The ones on this call that are going to grow the fastest are the ones that are going to learn from their own mistakes, plus they're going to learn from everybody else's mistakes that is ahead of them. So it goes to same building a team and all these other topics you guys heard, but if you only learn from your mistakes, you're going to have your learning curve. You learn from your mistakes plus Van mistakes and Jessica Irish and Ken Weinrib and your manager and the assistant manager in your building, if you learn from everyone's mistakes, you're more than likely shorten the curve. There's no way to trick time. You do have to spend the time. So hopefully that makes sense. But this is the 3 things I want you guys to practice in your interview is it's more a mindset and a confidence game. Don't let people think that they're the ones in control, because they're not. And then every time you respond to a negative, you also gotta, I mean, you're in marketing, you're in the marketing business. You need to package and present what you're saying in a way that is the way why you actually do it. Because if it was always commission or always 6 days a week, you probably wouldn't do it. The way you stay is because you know you can take a vacation like Jessica Irish for 2 weeks and still make money and be on off for 2 or 3 weeks because you promoted 15 offices or 45 offices or whatever, right? So that's probably the reason why you stayed.
So that's awesome. I have a question. Anybody that has questions, I know we had somebody that was asking about personal recruiting, but you're going to for sure cover that next slide. You talked about pairing negatives with positives, which I think is super important. And I know objections is something that a lot of guys don't practice with the interview. And it's the reason why when they take out a sharp person and, you know, just like a customer at the door, you know, when a customer gives you an objection and you don't respond quickly, confidently, and then ask the question to regain control, you can lose the customer's impulse. Now, you talked about how if you preempt these, then they're not going to be as much of a negative. So how do you preempt some of these negatives? Because you talked about how the field's a negative, commission can be a negative, hours can be a negative, but it seems like, Richard, you do a good job of like covering these things and pairing them with positives before they even become objections. So can you talk about that a little bit?
So the way you become really good at preempting things, I think it goes back to the first slide. If you practice and did your math backwards, you will have the intensity that you need. So that'll create enough repetition for you to learn from your own mistakes. And you'll just have a data log, just like probably every leader in this call can tell me the top 5 rebuttals you get from customers. A top recruiter can tell you the 5 top objections or questions that they get from applicants that they actually like. So you need to create a data log of your own and understand that everybody has the same negatives. It's typically outside influences, money, and time spent. And this is funny because this has been the same since this business started 40 years ago. I bet if I asked Larry, he would say it's the same thing. And it probably is going to be the same 3 reasons why people quit 4 years from 10, 15 years from now. So just the way I would do it is create your data log and understand. You got to go through the experience of what are the objections. And then from that point on, I just assume that everyone has that problem. So I prepare them for it. And if they don't have the problem, well, then it's easier, right? If I prepare you to run 10 miles and then it's only 5, you're cool with that. If I tell you it's 10 miles and then I'm pushing you to 12, then I got a big chance for you to complain to me. So I treat everybody like they're going to look at commissions as a negative. I treat everybody like they're going to look at 6 days a week as a negative. I just look at everybody like everything might be a negative because I've seen all these objections. I've failed enough times to see that that was the problem. And sometimes you talk to people about commissions, like preparing them for the negative, and they're like, whoa, no, I would never take a job on hourly. I would love the job that pays me what I put into it. I'm like, okay, well then great. Well, then I don't even have to deal with that negative, but I still prepared it just in case. So to answer easy and simple, your question is just do enough interviews so that you know what are the main things to preempt, and preempt everyone before they ask. Just say it. It's just more honest. It goes directly to the point. And if then they don't have a negative with it, then those are the people that will grow faster. I have people, Tommy in my office, I'm like, hey, you're going to work 6 days a week. It's very tiring. Why would you work that? And he was, well, I worked at a restaurant, so I work 7 days a week. So 6 days a week sounds great. And being home at 8 p.m. is awesome. It's like, okay, well then never mind. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. We have a question here from Dakota Hit. She says, I see the translation from LOA in terms of the field training and how it goes into the recruiting process, as well as like step 8, take control, and from the 8 steps to success. But what are some other things that you can take from the field, like the pitch or the field, that translates to recruiting?
Everything really. So we just talked about it's Dakota, right? So we just talked about objections. So when you hear the same objection over and over and your customer you kind of make that a part of your pitch to create different responses, right? Not necessarily to sell more, but to see if you can switch the response of the customer and continue to find a new problem. In the field, you learn everything. And that's why the field is at the beginning of the program, and it's a filter, right? It's going to either build you up to what you need to be or spit you back out. But I think the biggest thing is, like, a big thing I learned in the field is keeping your attitude straight, because I think every person in the business loses their attitude every day, or a lot of people. And you don't get good at not losing it. You still get frustrated. You just get better at getting back at it and understanding you're not in control. So the first time you're in the field, that's why the biggest turnover, Dakota, happens in the field. It happens in typically in entry level, is because people have a hard time. They lose their attitude and they don't know how to regain it. They don't see things in their control. So it takes them a week to get back. And after a week, they're gone, right? They lost it. But the people that stay at it, they lose it a second time. It takes them 4 days to get back at it. The next time, 2 days, the next time, 1 day. And then I still lose my shit every day, but now it takes me 48 seconds to get back. I just got better at catching myself that I'm not, that I'm not confident, but I don't stop losing it. And I learned that in the field, because the field gives you an opportunity every 32 seconds to talk to another person and another person and another person. So urgency and volume. I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it does.
And it also seems like, I don't know if you guys can hear me better now, but it also seems like the impulse factors like fear, loss, greed, indifference, like you can take those sort of 4 factors and then plug them into recruiting as well. Okay, good. Well, guys, great questions so far. We'll keep them coming. And if you want to get into your next slide here, Richard, and I think we got some more questions coming in.
All right. The last one is personal recruiting. Like, you have to understand that as you grow through the business, you're not in control of the company. You are in control of yourself. So do you need to do personal recruiting to get to management? The answer is probably not. But again, if you did the math backwards and you have a clear plan on what needs to get done for you to accomplish your goals, your manager doesn't really matter that much. I mean, it does matter because you spend a lot of time with her or him, but it's really you, the person that is in control. So personal recruiting is the gap to fill in between the goal you have and the reality of that office. Some offices recruit less for millions of reasons. Some offices recruit more, but that doesn't mean, that's not an excuse for you not to be successful. Think about it. You wouldn't tell your parents that you're not going to be successful because your manager at the job didn't do his job or her job. You would never say that, because you don't have control over it. So personal recruiting is also something you want to mock, and you don't want to personal recruit every human on earth, but you do want to create a specific pitch where you can approach probably either a customer or someone that you know, and you want to mock this. Like, you want to be good at it, because if you can attract people that you think would be good, like, you're cutting your time in half. And it's, again, it goes back to doing the math. Like, you got to do the math. And if you need 6 interviews a week or 5, and for some reason you didn't get that, you just need to go and find 2 customers, like 2 people a day. If you pitch 30 or 40 people a day, like, and you imagine if you tried on everyone, wouldn't you be able to create at least one first-round interview a day, at least, if you made that your goal, without distracting you from your sales target or your sales goal or your training? 1 interview a week. Let's say that's 6 in a week. Let's say that's 5. 1 person works out, or 2, or even 5, right? So it has to be uncomfortable. And I see a lot of the times leaders, they lose their train of thought in the business. The biggest reason is because they didn't do the math, or they did it, but they didn't commit to actually getting it done. And the second is because they stopped getting uncomfortable. Just like it was very easy. It was not very easy at the beginning to go knock on a door, or to, some of you guys, dude, go through the toughest shit, like you handling, sorry for my language, handling racist comments, handling people that are having tough days at home and they paid off on you, and you go through that, and it's so uncomfortable when you never heard it, and you kind of thinking that that's a part of your job is kind of hard to swallow. And then you get into leadership, and then you get comfortable, and then you just show up to the office with your leadership title, which is really the same, and you stop being uncomfortable. So you have to put yourself out there. And personal recruiting is something that was very uncomfortable for me because, I just couldn't figure out how to pitch the guy in the gas station that I loved his attitude or her attitude, even though I was pitching 45 strangers a day at their house. It's funny, but and I think you have to put yourself out there. And the way that you do it is, once you're willing to be uncomfortable, is I put these 3 bullet points down because I think it's the biggest thing. And I learned this from Michelle, which is, probably the best person in my business. She posts the ads for my business and my people. And she always talks about growth first. And we have a 200% growth projection, even with COVID. People are making $40,000 with commissions. They're also doing base pays, whatever that office does. And really the opportunity is for somebody to turn it into a career and manage 10 or 20 people. Like, is that something you would even consider, Mr. Gas Station person, Mr. Customer, Mr. Whoever? And I'm telling you, people will say yes. And then you get them through your administrator, you schedule the first interview or a day of observation. But I need you, like, you guys need to talk about it like that. Some people confuse personal recruiting with bringing everyone on board and say, hey, you want a job? We just go door to door. And then you attract all these people that are sometimes not the best quality. And then it kind of hurts the office. It kind of hurts your image and your team. So you also want to know how to talk about it. And if you insert this into the first slide of, let me invest 1 hour a day, 15 hours a week between interviews and practicing interviews to just get better at this skill, just like if it was a new sport, a new girl or guy you met, or a new something, and you made it a point to be good at it, you will. There's just, and I know, because I was not good at it. You guys can, I have calls recorded from Larry telling me how bad I was. And now I get to run this call because it, Van thinks I'm good. So I think it all ties in together. Hopefully that makes sense. Personal recruiting is, my first outside deal. Julie in Denver is a personal recruiter who's a waiter at Olive Garden. And it's crazy. I think it's a really, really good tool that is very unused.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have some questions, Richard, and I know that personal recruiting for a lot of guys is a big topic because they don't really know how to start conversations, and I think they over promote it and it's just kind of awkward. But so we'll get into those in a second. But one of the questions, which I think is a really good one, it says, when you're looking at a potential hire, what are you looking for? Is it more their mentality in the interview, or do you pay more attention to their work ethic once they start? Like, what do you look for in new people that you bring on your team?
Not much. I look at, can they do it? Like, are they willing to sacrifice time? And then are they capable? I believe in just, people need an opportunity, because if you would have looked at my resume too much or asked me too many questions my first interview, I would probably not be here. So I think people deserve the opportunity to work. And if they're capable and willing to put in the time, I think you should give them an opportunity. I don't mean hire everyone, but obviously they got to pass the background check and all that stuff. But I think the business, the training itself will put people in their place. A lot of people went through my training and they ended up being the best admins we've had ever. Other people didn't work out. Other people got to ownership. I think the business will do with those people what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of guys, they don't understand that, like, the tryout is the business. Like the interview is not necessarily the tryout. The tryout is the business. But like you said in your first slide, or maybe it was your second one, like, it's not about you giving them the job in the interview. You're not acting like they have it. You're sort of keeping yourself in control and making people earn the position, but you're not trying to judge a book by its cover too much, right? You're not saying, hey, you don't have this amazing resume. And there's people that, I mean, Richard, when I talked to you yesterday, you said that you were very employee minded when you started, and you were thinking about jobs at Amazon and you were looking at other things. So if someone would have said, hey, are you an entrepreneur? As the first question they ask you, you'd have been like, no. And then that would have been the end of the interview. And I think a lot of leaders, they get too caught up in someone giving all the right answers in the interview, and they don't let sort of the natural progression of someone getting excited about the business. Because my first month, I didn't even know what was going on. I had to see 3 or 4 opportunity meetings before I really understood the business.
Yeah.
And, so if you try to put people in a box right in that interview, you can really lose a lot of people when just giving them a chance and properly fear lossing them, but giving them a chance to be on your team. And I loved how you said the business will naturally put people where they're going to be. I love that. So we have a question about PR, and it says, when you're in public, whether it's a grocery store, restaurant, laundromat, mall, how do you start initial conversations with people that you see might be someone you want a personal recruit?
The way I would do it, I just ask myself, like everybody talks to themselves, right? So I just ask myself, should I do it? Does it feel weird? Should I do it? And if the answer is yes, then just go. And then just the way you approach somebody, there's no way. Like you make the commitment, and once you're in front of that person and something has to come out of your mouth, you will come up with the words. Even if it's a phone call you got to make, like you're not going to come with the perfect thing to say. If you commitment create like the commitment of it will create the creativity follows commitment. That's what I want to say. So you will come up with what to say once you made a commitment to do it, and you're in a position where you cannot back out. And it might not be beautiful what you say the first time. Again, it's a practice thing. Just put yourself in front, like say something and decide you're going to do it. And as you do it, the words will come out. You know the business well enough. You know what you want to say. There's not a pitch for it though.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you said this earlier, like we all go in the field every day and we talk to total strangers. We build relationships with them. We get them to give us their social within 30 minutes. And then there's someone working at a bakery and we're afraid to say hi to them. It's kind of strange, right? Because a lot of it is we don't practice. We don't look at it as an opportunity. We're looking at it as, well, what if they say no? But our law of average ratio in the field is 1 out of 10, right? I mean, that's typically what we're working on. And so, I think for guys that are going out and PRing, look for that 1 of 10 ratio. Try 10 times before you expect one person to come back. So 20 times, 30 conversations would equal 3 personal recruits that you like that are good for the business. And I think just the practice of sparking a conversation, asking them how long they've been working there. I was personal recruited. I was working at a bar at PF Chang's, and Alon came in and just said, started asking me questions about how long I've been working there. And he was really indifferent, and just, I was sort of attracted to the fact that he was in business and was wearing a suit and looked good. So I think when you're out in public, look good. I think that also helps. Someone asked if you had a copy of your actual personal recruiting pitch. Is that something you have, or is it just something you do?
I can absolutely make one. It won't be very long, but I do not have one that I just hand out to people. I want people to come up with their own, because it's a personal recruiting pitch, right? It's going to be a little different for each person. But I go over this, so I can, if you want me, I can type it up for this person. Just email me, whoever asked that question, just email me and I'll email back. And I just cover these: growth, money, and opportunity. Very simple and a very open-ended question. And I kind of tailor it to them, and I create a relationship. And then I just tell them, hey, listen, if it works out, great. If not, cool. But if you're open for an interview, let's just do it, right?
So I have a question. That's great, and we'll make sure that gets sent out. So when leaders take out interviews in the field, there's different personalities, right? They have people that come in very cocky and confident, and they sort of act like this is going to be an easy job for them. So how do you handle the confident person, right? How do you handle that person that comes in where they have a good resume? I was super intimidated when I took out an interview, because I looked at their resume. I'm like, man, this person has a better resume than me. How do you get leaders to sort of handle those type of people and take control during the interview?
People that are confident, I think, for example, that was not me when I first started. So I had to learn also how to handle somebody that initially might look better than you, and that's fine. Remember that they don't have the job though, and they're there for a reason. I think confident people love to be challenged. Just think about it like a sport. And it might feel weird for you to challenge somebody that's super confident, or they even seems more prepared or more ready than you are. But at the end of the day, they don't have the job. So I think when I think about sports people or athletes or high performing people in any industry, they love challenges, right? A good football, basketball player, they like their coach. Like the attitude they have is like they would probably love to go get a beer with them, but they're kind of scared to say the word beer in front of the coach. It's a weird relationship. And I think confident people love to be challenged, but at the same time, they also like to feel loved, and they also like to make sure it is known that they're great and they're super qualified. So going back to the initial thing, like it goes back to practicing, and you just have to do a few of those so you create your enough of your objections to create a relationship that you can still get the person to connect with you, and then have enough confidence to challenge the person and say, hey, reality is that I like you. Reality is that everything on your resume looks great, but as you probably understand, you really haven't proven anything to us. You're coming here to develop new skills, I guess. We got a lot that we can teach you. Our company's growing. Would you be comfortable in a position where every day you do great, we're going to make you feel a little less than that to push you? Would you be comfortable in a place where we're never going to be satisfied? We're always going to be hungry? Or like, is that a place that you're looking to work at? Because that would be here. If it's not, like, I understand, but I do have to ask that question. And I think sharp and confident people really they really respond well to, man, challenging me, that would be tough. Let's see if you can do it. I'll start just to try it out. And that's it. and then you got them in the door.
Yep. And it also seems like when you interview people, you're kind of interviewing them for the management position. And you're talking about how what they're seeing in the field is the preemptive things they got to learn and get good at as they transition into management. And one of the two things that we've done a lot of in terms of our preliminary interview, which I think is good for the leaders to do in their interview, is to focus on the client and the opportunity. So would you say, when it comes down to it, like whenever they have objections, whenever they have questions, it always goes back to the opportunity? Like, is that something you shape when it comes to your interview?
I think so. And I think, like we talked about preempting earlier. So I always find out something in their background that they can understand. Why would it be important to learn from within, right? So if I'm talking to a guy that was a manager in a restaurant, I'm like, hey, listen, you would probably never put a person that's never been in the food industry before to manage a restaurant, right? If they've never even been a waiter. We do the same way. We're looking for people to be the general manager, but I can't go up to Nestle or AT&T and tell them that the manager's never done a transaction or a sale. So we have to put you through that. We got a team that does that. Our main focus, though, is for people not to get too good at it, that they just want to do that, and move them into a position where they oversee a marketing team, a sales team. Does that sound similar to what you looking to do? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I would never let a person's never been waiting tables to run a restaurant full of people waiting tables. That makes so much sense. Okay. I think if you don't preempt it, then you lose the opportunity, and now you get into, like, not an argument, but a different kind of, rebuttaling all the time and objections and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, guys, Richard has left his phone number. He's left his email. Again, these calls are so great. We've covered so many different topics, and I thought what Richard talked about today was so good. Practicing, what you're doing and putting in the time that you put into the field, into recruiting, coming up with a 16-week plan, 4 months, based on a 50% ratio, not terms like non-negotiable, like it has to happen. I love that. And then really kind of looking at every interview and being in control. And guys, the business is recruiting, right? And you guys have heard this before, that the best recruiter is the next assistant manager. And the same thing as owners, the best recruiting owner becomes the next regional, national, the people who are running programs. And so, Richard, I really appreciate you putting in the time to speak to all the leaders today. Is there any last advice you want to give to the leaders on this call moving forward?
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys putting me on this call. I look forward to seeing people that never thought they could be on a call like this, like me, and then being able to have the opportunity to speak in front of, so many driven people. I just hope and wish that the people that are good on this call, you do the next step, you do the next right thing, because I promise you it'll help, because any average person can just put in the work and at least not be stressed about money, or not be stressed about a job a year, 2 years, 5, 10 years from now. And I think that's priceless, especially today. And if I can be a part of helping you get there, whether you do it in this business or not, I'll be really happy to say that, I was a part of any of you guys' development. I already got like 5 or 6 emails. I love that. I hope that I can help as many of you guys as possible. So please reach out. I will respond fast, and I'll definitely set up a time with anyone that wants to talk to me. I really appreciate your time, Ben. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Richard. And next week, we have another great speaker, Joy. She's going to be speaking next Tuesday morning, so please don't miss it. Richard, thanks again for everything. Guys, have a great week. We'll see you guys next Tuesday morning. Take care.